Welcome to day 2 of our technical business analyst workshop. Yesterday in day 1, we covered how to identify features, write user story, and explain the user story to the technical team for the customer registration. This is what yesterday we did. We took the customer input and all the way we stored it in the database. So yesterday we validated this change. Okay, so today, before we jump into today's use case or scenario, so we want to discuss about yesterday our homework. Okay, so the homework, let me go back to the slide. Okay, so the student exercise yesterday, this is the business requirement was given. So customer login feature, customer logins to using in the email and password, system validate credential and displays welcome message. So this is our path. This is the process we need to do. First, we need to identify from this use case features and functionality and draw process flow, write the user story and acceptance criteria, and be ready to discuss with the team and get estimated. Okay, so we are going to do all the steps. Okay, all right. So I'll switch back to. So I'll show you what we try to build here. I think this is what. Okay, so there is an existing page we need to build. When customer login, customer provide email ID and password, and when they click login, it should take to the dashboard. So this is what we try to build. Okay, so let me log in and show you. I have registered this customer. Okay, this is the test email I should use. Enter this email. So this customer is registered in the email. So here, so this is the existing customer. Okay, and the register password. Okay, so you can see, so the user was registered. It's taking to the dashboard. Okay, or the home page where it's saying welcome test user at example.com. Okay, I go to login back. So let's enter invalid name. Okay, so test 123 gmail.com. So this password or email is not registered. So when I click this one, it should show a error message. So it's saying invalid email or password. Okay, so this is the expected behavior. So let's see how we can capture the requirements, write the user story, how we can estimate this user story for this feature. Okay, so this is our exercise. Okay, now let me head back to to exercise 1. So what is our features here? So if you see this use case, we need a login page on the front end with fields and email and password. That's what we validated here, right? So we need a customer login, email and password, and we need a login button here, right? So that's the first thing we need here. And validation for the backend fields and incorrect credentials. So validation means like when user enter, so first we enter the test user which is registered, so it says successfully login, so it's take the information from here through the API, it's sent to the database, and the database give a validation whether this user and password is exist. If exist, say yes, it exists, and it's take to the dashboard. So that's the validation we are talking. If this is not existing, and it will throw an invalid email or password error message. Okay, so that's what we need to capture. So back here, backend API verify login. So the API piece we are not going to discuss here. Only we are going to discuss the front end part only because we haven't learned about API. Okay, so let's go to our next step is, so we identify the feature and functionality, draw the process flow. So draw the process flow, I'm going to use this one, the free tool, which is available free. So let's draw our process flow. Okay, so we can start with this guy starting. So first what we did here, we can go, so user enter credential here, right? So we can write user enter credential. So that's the first step, and next step we can put front end API request. Okay, so once user enter here, click login button, so this information is sent to the database, right? So that's a step we are capturing, number 2. Okay, so go back to the third one. Third one is, so here backend validates. So we are asked to do the system validate. So backend is nothing but I would say the middle layer of the coding. So here you can see this is the backend I'm talking. So the message is received from the front end. So the program will validate, asking the database to check whether this information is available or not. Okay. So since this is ending here, I'm going to start from here. Okay. Instead of that one, you can use a database here directly. So you can tell the information is validated from the database. Okay. Database confirms. So database is confirming. So the middle layer, the code is asking, we receive some data, user login via the API, and backend is asking the database to confirm whether do you have a record for this username and password. Okay, that's pretty obvious, right? So the next one, response and back. So maybe we can include a decision here. You can include something like that. If database confirm, delete this one. So if database is saying yes, so here you can say yes and no, right? Delete this one. So if database confirm, can put yes, and we can put one more. Sorry. This is just this is not very user friendly. Okay, this free tool, but you got the idea of what we trying to do, right? So let's say this is the yes. If this is no, okay. We are making two decisions here. Okay, that's it. Okay, we don't need to play this one. We can put this guy and we can put this guy. Okay, so here success message, and if say error message. So we have a happy path and an unhappy path. Okay, so this is the entire flow. Okay, so let's go back to our this one. So we identify the feature, we draw the process flow. Now next step to write the user story only for the front end, right? Okay, for that we are going to head on to Jira. Okay, so let's create a user story here. So here I'm only writing UI front-end user story. You can write front-end or UI. So this is for our login page, right? That's the use case. So customer login feature. Okay, so maybe we can just copy and paste to save time. That's customer login feature. Okay, create this one and user story is created. Okay, but there is no description yet. I'm going to open in a different tab to modify this one. So just add the description. Okay, so let's write user story. Okay, and acceptance. Okay, so this is user story. User story also we can write as a registered customer. Okay, I want to log into my account, right, using my email ID and password so that I can access my loan dashboard and view my account balance or like information, whatever information you want to view. Okay, so you got the idea, right? So let's write the acceptance criteria. So acceptance criteria, we are just only focusing on the front end. So let's add some bullet here. The login form must include email and password. So password fields. Okay, that's one. So here you can write the specification for the email field and sorry, email field and the password field. So maybe without going further, I'll just write both fields must be mandatory. Okay, I'll just include this one only. You can add other detail. Okay. So the next step we need to say valid message and invalid message, right? So if credentials are valid, you can write given when then method also, but just write in the detail, the system must redirect the dashboard and display welcome message. So you can include the welcome message as well. Okay, so if you want to include the welcome message here, you can include the welcome message but need to print here. Okay, and if the else case here, if credentials are invalid, what we need to do, the system must display invalid email or password should not be visible while typing and must be secure. So transmitted again. So this is what we need to do, right? So while we are typing, we should not show the password, and maybe we can ask the show button if user want to see the password. So you can add. So mainly we need two fields. Those are mandatory. You can add field validation, right? So if you need more detail, you can add field validation. Happy path, we are just discussing, just validate success message and the error message. Okay, are we clear on this one? So let's head on to the next story. So now we wrote the user story here. So let me save that user story before we lose this one. So save. Okay. So next step, talk to our developing engineering team and the testing team to get estimated this one. Okay. So let's head on to Jira. Just a Jira board. So let me refresh this one. Okay, so customer login feature is ready for us. So here we have two layers also, right? Like we need the API layer, we need the database validation. So we are only discussing the front end only, right? So this case, I would say with testing, so if you take total everything, maybe 10 story point, we would estimate all the work. But since we are only focusing front end, I would say 5 to 8. So again, these estimations are based on the complexity. So I'm just giving an idea when you talk to your engineering team, right? So you can explain the flow, right? So we need an API to take this information and send back to the backend, right? So we are not writing the API user story, we are only writing this one. And we assume the API is there and it's storing the data values here and retrieving the information and coming back the result, right? So we are only focusing, so these two are dependency for us, right? So maybe here 5, here maybe 3, and altogether for this work maybe 10 to maybe it's a large user story 13, we can break into the 3 stories, but our case we are only focusing on this one. So maybe we can go with either 5 because we need to build the form and validate everything, 5 or 8. So we'll go with the highest story point here. So when you are estimating, you don't just an idea. Ask your team and ask your tester developer how complex this one. So based on you can story point. So maybe I'll go with 5 here. Okay, so just the front end only. So you can add other two user story for the backend or API. So I'm not today. I'm not going to show you the backend and API because we will be discuss backend user stories, API and database stories upcoming session. So we are only focusing the front end. Okay. Okay. That's it for yesterday's our exercise. Now I'm gonna close this one. So now let's focus on our day 2. Okay, so day 2 we are planning to focus more today about front-end layer, the field validation. So yesterday we just took the fields as it is, the customer registration form. If you see, go back to registration. So we didn't validate anything. So as long as there is some data in this field, this is stored in database. But this is not the case with working with actual forms. So there should be a validation because we are not expecting all the users are follow the guidelines. Some users are simply enter invalid data. So we don't want our application crash. So we would like to add validation rules so that it's prevent entering invalid data into our forms. Okay. So we'll more focus on today field validation for this one from register form where I have a form built here. So we are going to expand our form, simple form, the form to. These are some UI elements you can see. Yesterday you discussed about fields, and there's a date picker here. You can pick the date. There is some radio buttons. There's a drop down here, and you can enter value here. You can increase here. There's a checkbox here. There's upload button here. Okay, so most of the common UI elements we are going to cover here. So let's see how we can write this user story for today's session. Okay, so now let's jump into our use case. So this is what we discussed. Pass this one. So our case studies and scenario today. So the business requirement is here to capture loan details from customer before submitting the form, right? So we are just expanding yesterday registered form with field validation. Okay. So first we need to identify the features. You understood the business requirement here, right? The business requirement is to validate the form here. So we have to validate this would be a text field, and there's some special length here we need to identify. Email, what is the form, text form, and how long this field should be long. So those kind of thing. Okay. Phone number, customer must select drop down. So it's a drop down, you see, right? So phone number notice a drop down. Just telling if there is a drop down, what is the drop down criteria. There's a checkbox must be selected. So this is a mandatory checkbox. Agree and terms. So this radio button must select it. So once you get the case study, so you can do a kind of a rough documentation, each field, what are the things you identify before write your user story. Okay. So here where UI elements their role. So first name is a text box. Okay, we are alphabets only, maximum 30 characters. So numbers are not allowed, right? So maximum 30 character length. Email is the text box, must include @sign, right? That's the criteria. Phone number text box 10 digit only. loan type is dropdown, required, gender is required, mandatory fields these are, terms and must be checked, submit button enabled when valid data, right? So here you can see already submit button is there. So this is just a simple form. I'm just showing everything. I'm not validating everything, but your real production. So you can hide the submit button until the valid data center. Okay, so that can be done also. Okay. Okay, so now we completed our work identifying the features and functionality, how should work. So now next step to draw our process mapping, right? So let's start the process mapping. So here I just put the detail. You can take a start. Customer open register form. Fill in each field. Front end check required field data types and length. If invalid, highlight field in red. Display message. If all valid, uh, enable the submit button. User click submit button. Front end send the request. Okay, display success message. Okay, so let's try to build our process map using this one. Okay, so we can use kind of this one. So let me delete this one. So okay, this is our from previous example. Okay, so let's map our use case. Okay, so we'll start with what our user is doing. Start here. User is open loan application form. Okay, good. Okay, next step is enter details, right? Enter details. So provide input, whatever you want to write, you can write, no problem. There's no wrong answer. Front end validation. So once everything entered, front end validations. So I'm going to put it down here. Next, if invalid. Okay, so here we can put a decision here. Again, right? So we can put a validation here. I need here too. I don't know why this is coming. Okay, I just copied this guy. You can make it a little nicer. Okay. Can we bring this one here? Okay. Better, right? Better than the previous one. So yes mean let's say validation pass. Okay. Fail. Okay, so if validation pass, what we need to do? So let's write validation fail, which is invalid. If invalid, right? Let's take this one. If invalid, so error message. down here. Okay, we can copy the same one. We can just change it there. If valid, what we want to show? We want to show the success message, right? Just delete this one. Okay, success confirm message. Okay. So here user is clicking the submit button. Okay. So here we can extra step. We can say valid. Enable the submit button here. So here the submit button is hidden. Okay. So for our case, I'm just showing everything here. The actual case is submit button is hidden. Okay. So here I want to show you. So here you can pick the date here, right? So example, if you pick the date here, you can type the date and you can ready button here. You can select what type of loan and you can enter or pre-select it here. So you can upload a document here. Okay. So these are the common UI buttons. Okay. UI elements. So we completed our third point. So now next step is to writing our user story. Okay. Okay, so let's head on to our Jira, close this user story and create one new user story. Okay, so again I'm writing UI. So this is for our loan application. Loan customer registration form. Okay, again there's no detail here. Let me go back here and edit the description. Okay, so let's edit the description. Okay, so let's add the user story here. So we are not learning how to use a story because they are not adding the background or not adding the epic and other elements. So we're just only focusing on the functionality. Okay, I hope you know how to clean up your user story. We are just only focusing the main functionality. Okay, criteria. Okay, so let's write. So as a customer or client, whoever you want to add user, I want to fill out a loan application from with all required required details. So that I can apply for a loan online. Okay, so acceptance criteria all. So maybe I'll add one more here. Requirement, because we field specification we didn't add, right? So maybe I can copy and paste this one. Oh, this one. Okay. Okay, maybe I'll use this one. What is exactly I need to do? You can write one by one or just for the saving time. Okay, the fields specification. Okay, so first name, and we are only talking about first name, and it's Similar, I'll add one more here for the last name also. Yeah, last name. Okay. So you can fill up, you can decorate, you can complete this one. Okay. So let's head on to acceptance criteria. So either you can capture this one under acceptance criteria, or you can write a separate column here under requirement. So in generic, we can write all mandatory fields must be validated on the front end. Number two, email and who must be follow the defined rule. So there are some rules for the email and fields. I'm just taking an example. Okay, email and phone and date of birth formats must be follow the defined rules. So what you can do when you're writing here in the acceptance criteria, either you can uh, write what rules or validation you need to include here, or you can capture here as well. Okay, it's up to you. How do you want? As long as developer and the tester understood, we're okay. Applicant must be 18 years old. So here there is a validation need. That's why we are asking the date of birth. 18 years old. Okay. So if the date of birth less than 18 years, we are not a submit button remain. So submit button remains disabled until all validations pass. Okay, these are all generic confirmation message. Oh, what happened? The confirmation message must displayed okay, like display upon successful submission. Okay, invalid fields should be clearly highlighted with inline error messages. Okay, so example, if the email ID is failing, it should say email ID is failing, invalid character, uploaded documents should be PDF or JPG for image format only. Okay, so what's the best practice, right? Like instead of you display generically, even some rules are applicable for all the fields. So I would recommend you create a chart, or like sorry, go here. I recommend you to create a chart field specification here and write all the rule how that field should behave, right? So example, let's take this gender. Okay, not the gender, date of birth. Do we have the date of birth here? Okay, we don't have date of birth. So let's take the phone number as this one. Okay, so the phone number 10 digit only. So you can write, is that a mandatory field? If do you need to validate if the texts are entered? What is the error message you want to show? So include everything in that for that field. So that's where it's um, very clear to the developer and the tester what's need to be do. Like here you see it's all generic, right? So some we are talking about data field and we are uploading field. So we cannot assume this field should behave the common criteria we displayed here. So my recommendation is write field by field and what should that field should do. It's expected behavior. Okay, that's it for the user story writing. So now we'll head on to how to get estimated this one. Okay, before we need, so when you are talking to the developer, let's go back to this one. So when you're talking to the developer, explain it's your to real-time front-end validation for all fields and what field need, what feature, one validation, what error message, like I explained you, right? So it's tell one by one, right? So document right here one by one all the validation, so that way it's easy for the estimation too. Okay, so this user story would take 3 to 5 points, medium complexity. So we will go with 5 user story for this one. Okay, so some people may, let me refresh this one. Okay, some people may estimate this one 3 or 5, it doesn't matter. So you can take your actual estimation from your developers and testers. Okay, for our demo, we just estimated 5. Okay, so now let's go back to our slides. So we done the user story. So we done estimation this one. So now your exercise, okay? So we'll discuss tomorrow this exercise. So feature customer feedback from front-end focus. Customer enters name, email, rating. So you need to um, you need to capture requirement for a feedback, customer feedback form. Okay, so requirement, customer enter the name, email, and the rating. So rating, we are providing 1 to 5 scale. Drop down, they can select, and there is a comment box. They can write up to 200 characters. Okay, so these are the fields: name, email ID, and they provided their rate, and they can write their comment. So rating is mandatory. Comment field should not accept more than 2 characters. Form should show confirmation message feedback submitted successfully, right? So again, you have to do the same thing, identify all UI elements and validation. So I have given some information, draw front end, um, only process flow, write a user story, explain how would you review with the developers and testers. So this is your exercise, okay? So this is only the front end piece. So today learning summary is you learn different type of UI elements for the web application and how to define front-end validation rules, length, data type, required fields. So length mean how many characters like long this field should be. Data type is it's a text or like a integer or like a number. So required field it's a mandatory optional, and you wrote user story and you estimated. So before we talk about what's coming up next, so we'll quickly test your knowledge, okay, using some exercises. Okay, front end, PSA. Okay, I guess these are the interview questions. Okay. Which of the following fields most likely to use a radio button in the customer registration form? Name, gender, loan type, phone number, right? So with given answer, name cannot be a radio button, right? Loan type, okay, can be a radio button. But our form, we can just check based on our form. So here, this is not a radio button. So gender is our radio button. So we can go with the answer gender, right? B is the right answer. So we are just answering based on our registration form. What is the main purpose of front-end validation? A, to store the data in the backend databases. B, to verify the data format and completeness before submission. C, to send data directly to the API. D, to encrypt customer information. So what is the front-end validation it's going to do? So to verify data format and completeness before submission, right? So that's what the front-end validation. If it is a 18 years old and email does have a domain there and phone number 10 digit. So this all validation before it's sent to the data. Okay. Question number 3, which field validation ensure the phone field must be exactly 10 digit? A required field validation, a length and data type validation, drop-down selection validation, checkbox validation. So it's not a required field, it's not the drop-down, it's not the checkbox because it says 10 digit, right? Length definitely and data type, right? Because it should accept only numbers. Question number 4, in the given case study, what condition enables the submit button? A, when the user checks the terms and condition box, when all required field pass validation, the backend confirms data when the email format is correct. So in the given case study, what is the condition enable the submitted button? So when all required field pass validation, right? Not on the condition. So it should pass all the validation to enable the submit button. That's what business requirement was. Question number 5, which of the following elements is not a UI control? A drop-down, B, checkbox, C, API endpoint, D, text box. C, API endpoint. That's the right answer. It's a drop-down, checkbox, text box. So API was not included in the UI element. Okay. Question number 6, a business analyst should clearly separate which two validation types in documentation. A, UI validation and data validation. So this type of error, okay, validation. B, front-end validation and back-end validation. C, manual validation and automation validation. D, API validation and API testing. So what they're asking, business should clearly separate which two validation types in documentation, right? Front-end validation and back-end validation, right? Because when you're writing front-end, we must clear what is the front-end, what is the back-end should do. Okay, so that's very important. Question number 7, what message should appear after successful submission in the case study? Invalid input, please fill out the record fields, registration successful, server not found. So if successful, based on the business requirement, it's a successful message. So our case registration successful. Q8, question 8, why is it important to include examples of valid and invalid inputs in requirement documentation? So answers are to help developers code faster, to make documents longer, to prevent ambiguity during the development and testing, to reduce need for UI design. So why include examples and valid in requirement documentation? So you see, if I discuss simply with the paper like this, then you may understand this one, but when I saw the actual expected solution what we are building, so this give a bigger picture, clear understanding to everyone, right? So this may not be the right UI. So I don't have any HTML or decorated this one. So you will understand. At least try to provide a basic using Excel or other document. Try to create a form, and you can create in Excel also, right? So you can just name and write your criteria. What's the field should be validated if you are not able to do that something. But some mockup scripts will be very helpful for to understand the flow. Okay, so that's what we are expecting here. The right answer, uh, not code faster, to prevent ambiguity during so like someone cannot make assumption, right? Like if you have the right precise requirements, so no one will assume anything, and there is no bug will come up later on, right? So yeah, of course, this will help developer code faster, um, and also reduce the need for UI design. This none of this one. So we want to make sure the testers and developers are clear during their testing site phase and the development phase. So C is the right answer. Q9, what is the story point estimation for the front-end validation usage? Again, this is just to provide an idea, okay? So, but based on your discussion with your team, your work can be more than 3 or 5 or 8 story point. So this is just to provide an idea, okay? Just to make you practice. So I would go with 3 or 5. So there's no right or wrong answer here. Okay, so this is actually should come from your team. So I would choose 3 if very simple. But the loan application with this one, definitely I'll go with 5. Whatever the highest points I want to pick here, so I'll go with 5 here. Okay, but if it's just a 2 field, maybe we can go 3. So we have a medium complexity work here, so I'll go with 5. Question number 10, the last question. When reviewing front-end requirement with the team, what should be the tester focus on? A, UI color plate, business logic and backend data, expected result or valid, invalid inputs, story point estimation. Obviously, expected result, right? So what should expected, what should the validation, right? So each field, that's why when you are writing your user story, you can create a chart and include what should that field should do. Okay, everything, mandatory, non-mandatory, alphanumeric, validation, error message, everything. So that way it's very easy for the tester when they are testing what is the expected result. All right. Okay. So we're done with the questions. Now we can head on to the interview questions. So what are the type of questions can come for interviews? Okay. So here, the first question I have, tell me about the time you gathered and document front-end validation requirement for a web. Okay, so this is just a base reference. So based on your use case or scenarios or projects you are working on, you can simply replace my text or replace my answers with the situation. And task is going to be the same, and actions going to be the same, and I guess the result would be changing. So task and action you can keep based on your. So let's discuss this one. So during a loan project or banking project, ensure the accuracy, client onboarding form, registration form. So this is just a BAU task for the business analyst, but how do you explain to the interviewer? That's important, right? So my task was define rules for the all registration form. So I conducted walkthrough with business owners and developers. So I would recommend you the method I was telling, include a chart, okay? So one by one. Logic required fields, so maybe a chart, Excel sheet or something with all the fields, and that way it's everything clear to everyone, okay? Document reduce UI validation related certified testing help. So, right? So when you have a documentation, right, each field, right, let's say you have 20 fields, you should have a 20 field text box chart one by one you can write, okay? So that reduce your lot of discussion time. Second question, describe a time you explained front-end requirements to the both developers and testers. Okay, so the same project loan application, unclear about submit button, right? So when to enable the button. So you can, I need clearly communicate validation logic, expected behavior, UI element. So what you are doing, I organized a short joint session, walk them through process flow diagram, valid versus invalid path, explain the submit button activates after all the mandatory fields. So this is very useful for your explanation, right? So here we have after fields received validation pass, right? If pass only, enable the submit button success message. Very, very clear. Can save a lot of time, right? Instead of you explain. So if you show this diagram, it's everyone can understand. Only show if the validation pass. Very clear, right? So these are very helpful. So I'll pass to, so the alignment avoided multiple testing cycle and form passed the first round of UAT with no front-end logic defects. Yeah, that's true when you have a clear requirement. Can you give me an example where you have a missing validation for OUI logic during analysis? While reviewing requirements for a customer feedback form, I noticed there was a rules for limiting the comment field input. I had identified this gap, ensure it was documented before development started. Of course, you need to capture this one. So always very important when you're capturing uh, customer input or user input, you should ask this question whether it's a mandatory field, how long field should be um, longer, how many characters. So you should include everything, right? And the testing result also. The result was change, improved user experience, prevent database truncation issues, and so if you not know what is the truncation, so we'll be discussing in our upcoming session. But just to, this can be a question in your interview, so you can come back and revisit the result if you don't understand. Okay, so I'll just quickly read. The change improved user experience, prevent database truncation issues, and was appreciated by the testing team for the clarity and validation and testing, right? So we have rules in database also how many characters we can save. But if you are upfront, if you are implementing this one, the front end, so we are avoiding unnecessary processing time in the back end too. Okay, so this is very important. The fourth question, tell me about a situation where you use process mapping to explain front end logic. So online loan application project is our project. Task was present logic clearly to a business and technical team. You create a simple draw mapping, right? So you can use this mapping for everyone. Anyone can understand this, right? So you can use this one. Diagram made is front-end technical stakeholder, development team implement the exact flow without confusion. So you can add more detail to the flow. You can add swimline or detailed diagramming. Okay, so when you have add detailed diagramming, so let's move on to the next question. Describe how you estimated a user-related front-end validation, right? So your case is you are not estimating as a BA, so you are getting estimation from your team, right? So during sprint planning, we had a story implemented registration page, multiple field level validation. I was responsible to discuss estimation story complexity with the team. I reviewed the number of UI controls and validation rules. So that's why you had to create that chart I was talking. How many fields, uh, how many validation rule we have to add. So it should be 3 to 5, and if you are increasing more fields, so 8, 13, let's go. Okay, the story was delivered within sprints, zero spillover, and estimation model become reference for similar UI stories the latest sprint. Yeah, you can use the same thing. All right, okay, so one thing left, what you learned today for your skills. Okay, so let's head back. So today you learn front-end validation rules, back-end validation rules you haven't learned yet, process mapping, user story acceptance criteria, of course, and how to talk to developers this front-end, and requirement walkthrough, right? So you can explain to what's the validation, what's the validation rule. You can walk through, give a walkthrough to business, technical team, and everyone. So resume, you can update hands-on experience analyzing and documenting front-end requirement for web application, including front field level validation, input, control, configuration, and UI interaction. So skilled, identifying front-end versus back-end responsibilities, preparing validation metrics, and creating process map for client-side logic. Right? So experience writing detailed user story and acceptance criteria, front-end validation features, and collaborating with developers and testers designed to ensure consistent user experience. Okay, so it talks the same thing. Ultimately, you know how to capture the requirement for front-end validation. All right, so that's it for today. Let's talk about what's coming next. Okay, so in day 3, we are going to talk about the backend layer. So we know completely, we discussed last 2-3 days how to capture user input, and now we are going to move back to backend on the day 3, and how backend system validate and store the data, how to capture the backend logic as a user story, how frontend and backend interact through the APIs. Okay, stay tuned until we see next time. Thank you very much again. Have a great day. Bye.